What's up, friends? I just wanted to take a few minutes to show you guys how to remove and replace the strings on a classical guitar. My guitar here is way overdue for a new set of strings. I can tell that I'm overdue because, first of all, the sound of the guitar starts to get less. The wound strings in particular start to sound pretty dumpy. I also have a lot of discoloration down here on the parts of the string where I don't play. Intonation starts to get to be a problem. It's hard to get the guitar in tune. All of those are really sure signs that you could use a new set of strings. And if you're having any issues with your guitar, like if you're getting a lot of buzzing, if you can't get your guitar in tune, step number one, change your strings. That usually takes care of the problem. So we're going to need a couple of tools in order to do this well. You really only need two. A string winder, you can get this at any music store. It's like $1.25. Do not try to change your strings without one of these. And I always like to have something to cut the strings with. Planet Waves makes an awesome little combo tool that's clippers and a string winder combined. So pick up one of those and that's your all-purpose tool. All right, well, for starters, we got to get the strings off the guitar. Working with these tuners here, you've got to loosen them all. We're used to righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, but just keep in mind that that's actually backwards on guitar. This is going to, righty is going to loosen the strings. Lefty is going to tighten. So string winder, you just pop that on like that, give it a turn, and it starts to loosen the string for you. Now, if you've got a lot of guitars to do, I got to tell you, this was a great purchase. You can buy this. I got this on Amazon. It is a string winder that you attach to an electric drill. So if you feel like doing this the quick way, it certainly makes the job faster. Loosening up all my strings, and I'm just going to loosen them all up. Now, while you're doing this, you want to be careful because there are some parts of the guitar that tend to be held on by the tension of the strings. So, for example, the nut right here, on many guitars, this is not actually glued on. It's just the tension of the strings holding it in place. Also down here, the saddle across the bridge, oftentimes this isn't glued on. So when you loosen the strings, if you take them off, sometimes those parts of the guitar can fall right off. Now that I've got the strings pretty well loosened up, now I can just cut them right off. I don't have to be too ceremonious about this. I just take my string cutters, I usually do it down here by the bridge, and I just clip them right off. I've got to remove these from the back, so I just kind of peel those off like this. 1, 2. And then same thing down here. Got to get these untied from the ends. Tuning machines. And keep in mind that a classical guitar is built to have these things being really tight all the time. So you could pull on them pretty hard and you're not going to hurt anything. So. Okay. Now that you've got all the strings off the guitar, this can be a good time to just kind of wipe it down. I just use a dry cloth. I tend to not use any kind of polish or anything on my guitar. So just take a dry cloth, wipe down underneath where the strings are, because of course when there's strings on there, it can be really hard to get to some of those hard to reach places. And yes, I am using a sock. Oh, see what I'm talking about? Do you want to make sure you put it back the right way? Okay, so I've got it wiped down, got all the dust off of it. Now I'm going to throw some new strings on it. I'm using D'Addario Pro Art Extra Hard Tension. It's always my go-to string. I bought them in bulk. I bought like 10 packs of them a while ago, and I think this is my last one. I'm not psyched about them. I'm kind of thinking about switching it up. Sometimes my first string can sound a little wimpy with these, so I'm not really sure what I would be looking to switch it to, but if you have any suggestions, let me know. What I like to do is leave the little bit of thing on there, the little tape, because it helps keep the string in place. I start with the headstock. Run the string through the tiny little hole in the headstock. Get that through there. And then I grab it, and you can see because that little bit of tape is on there, it doesn't go all the way through. I find that very helpful. But this is the really important part of changing your classical guitar strings. You've got to tie this on at the end. You have to tie this to the bridge. Most guitars have a ball end, and you just run it through the bridge, and the ball stops the string from going all the way through, and you tighten up the string, and it works fine. Ball end strings do not work for a classical guitar. You can get them, don't, buy regular strings and tie them on. It's all about energy transfer. Your string is vibrating. That's what gives you the pitch. You need to get that pitch into the soundboard of the guitar to actually project the sound out. And that's all going to happen through the bridge. So you want the string to be tied onto the bridge so that as much of that vibration goes through the bridge as possible to give you a bigger, fuller sound. With just the ball end sitting on the back of the bridge, not very much energy gets transferred through, and your quality of tone, your volume will suffer. So don't use ball-ended strings. Use regular strings, and you'll be much better off in the long run. So I'm going to tie this on. Here's how I tie on my strings. There are a few different ways of doing this. This is the way that I prefer. You've got the saddle here. This is where the string will sit. There's a tiny little hole at the back of the bridge. You have to run the string through there. So through the hole, so now it's starting to come out that hole. I take it up, and now all I'm going to do is pull it back over, wrap it around the string, and then I'm going to go through 4 times. I'm going to wrap it around. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's really important that you go around and around and around when you tie it on, because if you don't go around enough times, the string can actually come untied. Once it's at tension, it's going to be getting pulled very hard, and this end of the string could pull through and it can come untied. Now, if that happens, it comes untied and then it gets snapped out of there so quickly that the end of the string actually comes out and smacks against the top of your soundboard as it goes back through the hole, and it will leave a dent right here in your soundboard. It's really important that you do that enough times. I'm going to show you how to do it again with the second string, but for the first string, I went around 4 times. I went around the main string, through the opening 4 times. Now you can see I've got this big long length of string sticking off. I'll show you what we're going to do with that later. So now I've got that tied. So now I've got to get it secured at the other end. I'm going to bring it all the way across the neck, get it into the nut up here. I'm going to pull some of that extra string through. I've got the string going through that hole, coming out the back. Now what I'm going to do is take this extra length of string, and again I'm just going to wrap it around the other length of string a few times. This one, just three times or so is good. Oop, my little piece of paper came off. That's fine, don't need that anymore. So you can see I've got it kind of wrapped around itself. And now, as I tighten it up, I should really be using my string winder for this, but as I tighten it up, it will not slip. Again, slippage is a big problem with the unwound strings. Usually first, second, and third strings are unwound. Make sure it's in the right position in the nut. Tighten it up. Don't even worry about getting it really in tune right now. Just get some tension on it. And as you can hear, it just keeps going flatter and flatter. That's the string stretching out as you just put it on. All right, so I got one on. Now I got to repeat the process for the second string, and I will show you what we're going to do with this little end here in a second. Same process for the second string. Take the second string off, leave a little bit of tape on, put it through. Tape will keep it from going all the way through. Now, to get things nice and neat down here, we've got this extra bit of string, and sometimes these things can just stick off in all directions and it looks pretty terrible. But what I like to do is, as I'm doing the second string, same process, put it through that opening. What I'm going to do is actually take this little bit and tie that in there as well. Okay, so this extra string is going to get tied in as well, so it all gets tied down. And it doesn't, so instead of all these little bits of string sticking off your bridge, it all ties it together. I've got my string coming through the bridge. I take my extra and I go over this way and I go underneath the main length of string, which creates this little opening. And then I take the tip and I go into that opening. For the second string, I'm going to go 3 times. 1, 2, 3 times. Just going to hold that extra end and pull it tight both ways. So you got that nice little knot. I'm gonna get right in there so you can see what I've got there. So now you can see the extra length of string from the first string is now tied into that second string. Keeps it looking nice and neat. And then I will do the same process for the tuning machine end. on the second string up here. Wrap it around a few times. As you tighten them up, make sure you're getting the strings in the correct place in the nut so that they sit in the correct little notch. Sitting in the correct notch of the nut there. Always important. Alright, I'm just going to keep repeating that. Go right through all 6. When I tie the third string on, I only wrap it around twice. Because as the strings get thicker, they're less likely to slip. Fourth string. Now when you tie on a wound string, like the 4th, 5th, and 6th string, you only need to go around one time. Again, I'm continuing all the extra little bits of string. I'm tying those in with each new string. That's why I started with 1 and went downward to 6, because the strings are naturally going to point this way. So, got my extra string here. I go under, bring it over, into the little opening, pull it tight for both sides, and there you go. Also, once you get to the wound strings, you don't really need to tie them in up here. As you go, sometimes the string, as it winds, is going to want to get closer and closer to the wood here. So sometimes I just kind of pull it back away because you don't actually want it to rub all the way against the wood on this side. So as I tighten them up, I kind of pull them outward so that they're less likely to rub against this. You can see this string just barely misses this bit of wood right here. So if it winds all the way in, it rubs against this, it can damage the finish and stuff. All right, 2 to go. One. Sometimes when you get down to the 6th string, the strings themselves are very thick and they can be pretty tense, and it can actually be kind of tough to force it through the little hole at this angle. So sometimes what you have to do is put a little kink in it like that, so it like gives it a little angle like that, and then you're able to work that through the opening. See, I've got the angle sort of angled up like that, and then it'll get a little start going into the hole in the bridge, and you can push it through. Just a little trick. Alright, so I've gone through the process for all 6 strings. You can see now what I've got here at the end of the guitar, where I've tied each one on. The extra string from the 1st string got tied under the 2nd, the extra string got tied under the 3rd. All the extra is sort of tied in underneath, and that helps it keep it looking neat, looking tidy. Also notice that when I tied it, the 1st string I wrapped around probably 4 times. This one I did 3 times. The 3rd string I only did 2 times. And then each of the unwound strings, you could say, or each of the wound strings, sorry, only went through once. And that should work fine, okay? This is the most important thing, to make sure you go around enough times. If you don't, the tension of the string will slip the string through and it'll come untied, and you can damage the top of the guitar right here. Any little ding right in the top right here will often develop into a crack, all that could extend all the way down your soundboard. So it's really important that you not let those little string dings happen when you're changing your strings. So right now I still have all the extra string on here. This bit's hanging off here, and also of course up here I've got all these bits hanging out. I probably don't need to, but I always like to leave them on for a day or two, just in case it slips a little bit. I have made the mistake of cutting them really short when I didn't put them on correctly, and then it slipped through, and I had to throw the string away and get a new one, because then it wasn't long enough to put the string back on. So leave them on for a day or two. Make sure that they've really settled in well. And then, of course, you have to get it in tune. All right. Now, this guitar is horribly out of tune. Not even close. Now, I'm going to take a minute now. I'm going to get this guitar in tune, but then within 1 minute, it will be completely out of tune again. And that's kind of the nature of classical guitar strings. The nylon will stretch and stretch and stretch, and it'll be a few days before it really settles in. To help it settle in, you can stretch the strings out a little bit yourself. To do this, I'm going to get my low E up to pitch here. Sounds about right. And then all I'm going to do to help stretch the string out is just grab the string and kind of pull it out away from the body. Right? Pull on it, pull on it, pull on it, pull on it. And just kind of go up the length of the string as I tug on it, and that will help all the slack kind of tighten up. Get it back up to pitch and then go through. So there's my A, pull on it, pull on it, pull on it. Get that slack out of there, and then tune it up again. It'll take a few days, just keep picking it up, keep tuning it, stretch them out. After a day or two, it'll start to settle in, but if you when you have new strings, you can expect the strings to stretch. It will go flat. Just keep tuning it back up, and it'll settle in after, depending on how much you play, it'll settle in after 3 or 4 days. So let me know if you have any questions about anything. I told you my way that I like to tie these in, but there are other ways. If you've got a way that you really like to do, feel free to share it with me. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you do different. Hopefully that's helpful for you. All right. See you guys.